Podcasting is all about great stories. However, as an audio format, there is still a bit of production involved. In this video, I want to talk about 3 basic podcast editing techniques that I use every day. Hi, it's Mike from Casefile and Casefile Presents. On this channel, I'm releasing videos on podcasting and audio production, so if you enjoy the content, hit subscribe and notification buttons. 2 more to go, and these 2 will require sort of a proper audio knowledge rather than feel. And the first that I want to talk about is noise floor / room tone. One of the first things I do when I start a new project or start working on a podcast episode is to create a room tone for the duration of the podcast. Now, I want this room tone to match the floor noise that's always there in the background. What is a floor noise? It's the noise that's generated by your recording equipment, and it will be there in the background of your recordings, of your dialogues. And I'm sure you edited some recordings that were very, very low, and then when you pull the volume up, all the noise floor comes up as well. Now, you don't want it so high, you don't want the hiss, you don't want that floor noise to be so high that it's audible and annoying, but still you do want a low floor noise sitting in the background, especially between the sentences, between the words, rather than silence. What is the room tone? Is the tone of the room. The best way to describe it is if you press on record, leave the microphone recording, and then exit the room. And so what the microphone will catch will be the tonality of the space that you're recording in. And I'm not talking about the external noise like your neighbors or planes flying over the house. Now that we've got the definitions sorted, let's jump into Pro Tools. Let's now talk about the room tone. So we got the same audio that we were working before. I've consolidated it for the purpose of explaining the room tone and how I go about it. So, as we said, room tone is everything that your microphone picks up, all the noise, essentially the noise flow. What tends to happen is you record a dialogue just like here.
The attack in the park. They played cards and decided to stay the night, retiring to bed at 11 o'clock. At
you got
2
some
a.m.
bumps, you got some random noise happening there. When, especially for this kind of podcast, you really want to have a nice, clean dialogue, nice, clean and smooth storytelling. So we want to get rid of that. There are a couple ways to do it. Some better than others, but I want to at least show you how can you work it. First of all, a lot of people, for sort of controlling that noise floor, controlling the room tone, use the noise gate. What noise gate does is essentially, that's how it looks, cuts everything below a certain threshold. You can move a threshold here. Some people, I noticed that some people put a noise gate at the source, which is a mistake because you are recording everything with the noise gate on, and there is no way you can go back in case it doesn't sound right. So if you intend to use noise gate, much better way is to use it as a plugin, or as an insert, because you can always bypass it. Okay, let's listen to the dialogues with the noise gate on. Now we heard a little bit of that breathing or, random noises between the lines, and see how it sounds with the noise gate on.
4 months after the attack in the park. They played cards and decided to stay the night, retiring to bed at 11 o'clock.
So if I put the threshold up, then it sounds really unnatural, of course.
4 months after the attack in the park.
If I want to try and find the sweet spot, then
4 months after the attack in the park. They played cards and decided to stay the night, retiring to bed at 11 o'clock.
I want to cut out stuff in between, and that's what essentially noise gate would do, and I'm gonna use strip silence for that. So I'll strip. There's some stuff that fall behind it, but that's essentially what we got. So let's listen to it. Let's mute the noise gate, and as you can hear,
Cindy felt she had no choice but to move house again. She relocated from Vancouver to the city of Richmond, 15 kilometres south. Things settled down, and
so as you can hear, you got that silence in between. It takes you out of the listening experience because that constant noise is gone, and it's still happening underneath the actual dialogue. Now, there's a couple ways to combat that if you don't have any advanced tools. First, let's say you want to use that gate and that cuts everything below. So let's go back, strip silence off. What you can do is you have the room tone that matches what's happening there on the dialogues and have it on a track above. And as you can see, I've got one here I've created for this purpose, and I've got it on mute. And, you can't really hear it. It's quite low. Let me... Yeah, so it's quite high now. What would happen then, and now I'm absolutely, I'm exaggerating. So we've got our noise gate. You want to work with a noise gate that cuts everything there automatically. You've got a room tone there, and it will...
Cindy felt she had no choice but to move house again. She relocated from Vancouver to the city of Richmond, 15 kilometres south. Things settled down, and Cindy enjoyed the garden at her new rental house, a modest brown and white timber multi...
So that's one option you can do it. Let's mute that and go with strip silence. And that's the other way you could do it as well. So you've got your strip silence, you've got your dialogues, and you've got constant room tone.
Cindy felt she had no choice but to move house again. She relocated from Vancouver to the city of Richmond, 15 kilometres south. Things set...
And that would work as well. But as you are probably aware, there is an issue there. And the issue is that when we got the noise flow there and the dialogue, the room tone is doubling up, right? Because between the dialogues, you only have that room tone. And then when we go onto the dialogue, it will double up with what's on these clips. And there's a couple ways you can do it. You can fix that issue. Because what we want the room tone to fill the gaps between the dialogues. I'm actually gonna fix that because let's just focus on these three gaps here. We wanna fix them. What you can do is, at least in Pro Tools, select the objects only, then maybe copy them and mute. And then now essentially you've got the room tone that ends and starts.
Cindy felt she had no choice but to move house again. She relocated from Vancouver to the city of Richmond, 15 kilometres south. Things settled down.
What I would tend to do if that was the way I had to go, and I actually had to do something similar for one of the projects, but what I tend to do is, put these fades there. So you don't want the room tone start on the cut and end on the cut. You want to be a little bit faded. So it's
15 kilometres south. Things settled down, and Cindy enjoyed the garden at her new rental house, a modest brown and white timber multi-levelled home.
The other way you could do is you could have it copied and just manually insert in every track, So we copy that bit, we paste it there and match with the dialogue. You can do fades there if you want.
To move house again. She relocated
Obviously,
from...
I'm exaggerating the noise that I've
Move house again.
But if we do it to 0...
But to move house again. She relocated from Vancouver to the city of Richmond, 15 kilometers south.
Now, quite smooth. Again, that would take a lot of time because then you manually have to match the room tone to each gap. Probably take a lot of time. But that's the way you can do it in most of the software, really, even the free ones, the cheapest one. Question, how do you get that room tone that it matches the room tone of recorded dialogue? The way to do it is you, like we said, we leave the microphone running in the room, you step outside, whatever the microphone caught, except for the neighbors or random noise, that will be your room tone. You can then create a long track out of it, and use it throughout the episode. You can duplicate that room tone, etc. But, okay, so that's the way you can do it in most of sequencers. But there's another way to how I do it. And I'm gonna skip the other noise cleanups and we'll just focus on the room tone. So I've got these dialogues there, and let's pretend they've already been cleaned up and went through other processing that I would do. What I'll then do is I can either do it in here or I can send it to my RX8. I will send it to RX8. So we've got our dialogues with the black gaps, meaning silence in between. I want to fill it with room tone. Essentially, there's a module called Ambience Match in the RX8, and I've got one for case file already. I'm gonna use that, and I want this unselected because that will mean you will only output the Ambience Match. We don't want that. And what it does, when I render, you will fill the gaps with the room tone. Then when we send back, there we go. We don't need any fades. We don't need anything there because it's all filled up with a nice room tone. And the cuts, well, we'll have to worry about it later during the manual cleanups, but that's outside of the scope of this video. So that's a few ways you can use the room tone and implement it in your recordings. That's it for today. I'm Mike Migas. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn about podcasting, you can view the rest of my channel or my website, mikemigas.com. For now, you can share, you can like or subscribe. I'll see you later.